Hello and welcome to Curdcast, the podcast for people who like to eat cheese. I'm your host, Jen Mason, and with me, as always, is our co-host, Julie Fayfan-Balzer. Hello, Julie. It's nice to have you here again. Happy September.
I'm always happy to eat cheese.
We're always happy to be there. Oh, by the way, Justin, we're going to introduce you, but we should warn you first that sometimes Julie and I start singing. And so
Cool.
I'd like to bring everybody in. If you're just listening to this, you don't see that Justin is on this podcast, but you can watch this podcast as well. I would like to welcome Justin Warner, our co-curator for this very special box, Warner's Wonders. Welcome, Justin, to our cheesy podcast.
Thank you so much. I'm super pumped about all of this. It seems like you're in the happiness business, and I'm happy to be in said happiness business.
Excellent. Well, for those of you who don't know, we'll talk a little bit about it later, but Justin and I seem like we're always talking about cheese. I was just talking about cheese with Justin on his podcast, Warner's Wonders. We'll talk about more about that. Listen to the end. We'll tell you how to find it. But I think I really dig talking about cheese to people. And it's nice when Julie and I can bring other people in so we don't just feel like it's gratuitous cheese eating. So
happy to help.
To the gratuitous
Is there such a thing as gratuitous cheese eating? I mean, I feel like all cheese eating should be encouraged at all times. It's really like a necessary part of happiness.
That's true.
I mean, for me, it is. So, Justin, everybody who's been listening for a while knows Julie and I, but if people are new, I want to let you know that Curdbox is what we're doing today. So we create Curdbox, which is a cheese and pairing subscription box, but it's really a discovery box that we send to people every month. And it's 3 cheeses, 3 pairings that all revolve around a story. And this year we've been doing really fun things, and we've been partnering with really cool people like you who dig cheese and want to help create a story. It's just nice. It's the fun part of our job, so we like to bring other people in and let them have fun with us. But I want to tell people that Justin is somebody I've been following for a long time. He is like my food TV spirit animal. I just I discovered you first on Food Network Stars. I think season 8, right?
Yeah, that was some time ago. Wow, you're an OG fan.
Yeah, I am, and I I'm a fan of Alton Brown. I'm a fan of people who think beyond like what's just there. And I know you were joking at the start of the podcast about having limited skills, and I would say anybody who's watched you on TV or eaten your food or had any experience with you would say that's baloney. But I love the way your brain thinks. And I remember, as my husband and I would watch the shows, because I think it was old enough that we weren't binging it. We were watching and waiting every week to watch those episodes. And I just really enjoyed the way you look at the world and in particular food. And did you know that you did that from the beginning, that you just had a different way of looking at it, or did you sort of have to figure that out for the show?
That's a big question, and a good question, because I get asked a lot of questions all the time, but nobody ever really asks, what was the radioactive spider?
Yeah.
Well, I don't know. One day I was hanging out playing Xbox One, like the original Xbox, so giving you a sense of time.
Yes.
And I had a Japanese roommate who was a chef. We worked together at a restaurant. I was mostly just a waiter. And he gave me a strange wad of food, and it was, unknown. And he asked me to guess what it was. And it turned out that
You're brave.
Yeah, I know, that I've always been brave about food. Like, I like eating everything. So that's thing one. But then when he gave me this thing, he asked me to guess what it was, and it turned out I guessed it correctly, which was a baby eggplant that had been pickled in miso and mustard. And he was like, "Whoa, you're good." And I think that might have been like the moment where I was like, if I can, as a waiter, as a consumer, as someone who eats, guess these sorts of things and understand, maybe I can be better than just a waiter at a sushi bar. And that's really, I think, one of the moments that was like, food is your life now, kid. Just figure it out. And I kept chasing like higher check averages. So I'd go from restaurant to restaurant. And then eventually you get to the kind of restaurant where if you don't know everything about food, then you're not going to be hired at that restaurant. So That's pretty much the ball game, I guess.
Yeah, it's funny that you call it the radioactive spider sort of bite, because it does feel like it's a superpower to you because it stands out next to other people. And not saying that other people aren't as great as you are. It's just it is unique and it is refreshing. And even when you're co-hosting a show now, or do you, like, that's your presence. We expect you to bring like sort of this like out through in the back door, outside the front. Like, what? I didn't think about it that way. Are you, when you cook, are you, I remember watching Sarah Moulton's show like years ago, and it was like it was like early chopped, like she'd pull it off and you'd have like three things would be like mustard, chocolate, and something you'd have to make dinner. And my husband and I have joked forever, like, that's what I love to do. And mostly it's because I don't want to go grocery shopping, because I'm lazy. But are you more interested in interesting foods and trying to figure out how to make them accessible, or are you more interested in taking accessible foods and making them more interesting, if you had to pick?
Interesting to acceptable, I think is what I would go for. It's funny that you say that. I'm working on a new project and revolving around wine, and I live in an area where there isn't a whole lot of wine. So people are intimidated by words like, Gewürztraminer, Grüner Veltliner, Blaufränkisch.
Yeah.
And so I'm devising a sort of scatter plot of wines. And so sweet, dry, comforting, interesting.
I love it.
Yeah, I'm the interesting. I like taking the interesting and trying to build the bridge so that people can figure out, oh man, like, it's just a few steps away from my normal comfort zone. Let's expand that comfort zone. And so, yeah, that's it.
That's fantastic. And that's kind of a great segue, don't you think, Julie, into this box, which is, we tried to pick unique things. You and I talked at the beginning, Justin, about what you might like this box to be. What could the theme be? And you said, I want to bring in weird and not run-of-the-mill stuff, and like let people fall in love with it and be wowed by it. And so we went out looking for just like, it wasn't going to be a cheddar box. It wasn't going to be a cheddar. It wasn't going to be an aged Gouda, which, by the way, listen to Justin's podcast if you want to talk about aged Gouda. And that's really where this all started. I just lost a headphone, but I think we'll be okay. I think, Julie, that's kind of, I didn't talk to you about how Justin and I put together this box, but
I know, because I just go into it completely blindly. I trust you and I let you feed me whatever you want, and then we see what happens. So
excellent.
That's the deal that we've made.
So I think we should jump into this. So basically what happened is Justin gave us some, like, this is what I'd like to think about. And we brought him a bunch of cheeses. He tried them. He picked his top favorites. And then we worked on finding really cool pairings that were at the level worthy of the interesting cheeses. And we always do interesting cheeses if this is your first box. But this one, we really focused on the cheese being interesting more than a story. So the theme was, this is interesting cheese. So the cool thing about
I
this,
knew it was going to be a super special box as soon as I opened it, because I am a huge fan of squishy, stinky cheeses, and normally we get a lot of sort of hard cheeses. So I was already delighted when I saw the beautiful blue veining and lots of other stuff melty around in there. So I'm super excited.
Excellent. So we start with, so one of the things also, Justin, you asked about was we wanted to include at least one Wisconsin cheese. Because you've been doing some work with the beautiful Wisconsin cheese people. So we're going to actually start with that cheese. But the special thing I was sort of hinting at the beginning is that this box is what we call in our office the moo ba ma box. So it's got cow for moo, it's got sheep for ba, and it's got goat for ma. So moo ba ma, which is kind of a fun industry thing that we always joke about, the three main cheeses that we end up eating. And our pairings ended up to be three sort of pairings from other countries, but as reimagined in the US. So all around, Justin's world of reimagining, it's just like a cool box. And I love that it happened by accident by us just creating a cool box with Justin. So let's start eating some cheese. We're going to start with, I cut mine into giant triangles for those of you that can't see this. We're going to start with the Cooch mountain cheese. This is a sheep's milk cheese. It comes from Wisconsin. So, Wisconsin is our biggest cheese maker in the States. It's the biggest state cheese maker. It makes a lot of commodity cheese, and it makes a lot of award-winning, world-renowned other cheeses as well. Smells so good.
Tastes pretty good too.
So this is a sheep's milk cheese, so it's going to taste saltier. For those of you who've been on our podcast before, you know that the if the cheese was made by a cow, and we made the same thing with goat and with sheep, the sheep's is going to be the saltiest, based on the milk that we're putting into it. Wow, I am in love with this cheese. I don't know why, but I want to have it with like peanut butter and jelly and this cheese. There's something about the saltiness and the sort of sweetness. I don't want to have it on the PB&J, but I am just
interesting because it looks like it's going to be a waxy cheese, especially my cheese has been out for an hour. So it definitely has that slight sheen on it, you know, and yet when you put it in your mouth, it has much more of that creamy consistency. The smell definitely reminds me more towards like a Parmesan or something very familiar, but then you put it in your mouth and it doesn't quite taste like that. It's got a really interesting aftertaste. That's almost sharp, I guess is the way that I would describe it. So I'm excited to see how the pairings go with it, because I think that aftertaste is really going to partner well, you know what I mean, with some other flavors.
Very nutty too. What do you think, Justin?
Super pumped about this. So in my cheese slinging days, sheep's milk were always kind of like the final frontier of cheeses. And I think the thing that I love most about this, coming back to the taking the interesting and making it accessible, I feel like you could slice this up on any old, cheese board, and people would anonymously grab it and not know what a wild adventure their mouth is waiting on, because it looks completely like non-threatening. Yeah. And then when you taste it, you're like, oh man, there's a lot going on here. I think the nose for me is like slightly, you get some straight cheese smells, but there's like a weird, like almost like, this sounds weird, maybe my head is strange, but I get like a weird like geranium vibe from it.
Yeah.
Like I don't know why I'm feeling geranium, but that's like where my mind went when I smelled it, was this pot of geraniums we used to have on my front porch when I was a kid. And then the cheese, once it's in your mouth, like as you chew it and it kind of disintegrates into the beautiful sort of paste that it is, it's a real roller coaster. Like second one, you're like, okay, I'm getting some like waxy sort of notes, and then as it kind of spreads out over the palate and you start to salivate, you're like, oh man, there's a lot going on here. The kind of tartness of it, indeed the salinity is up there, and then finally like into this sort of like nut pleasure dome at the end.
Yeah,
big 100%.
Fan. So this is made by Hidden Springs Creamery, and this is a raw milk cheese. New people, raw milk is good cheese. It makes great cheese. And people always ask us in the class, and I always tell them, like, when France dies off, then we would start to be afraid of raw milk cheese. They're like our canary in the coal mine. And so far, France is fully alive. And it's not that old. It's 3 to 4 months. So it's still, I was holding this up for the camera before, that it's still sort of pliable at room temperature, which is the best way to eat it. It doesn't just crack, which an older cheese would, which is still fine, just doesn't do that. And it's made in what they call the driftless region of Wisconsin. It's where like the glaciers didn't pass through. So there's still like, it's still mountainous. There's a lot more flora. It didn't get carved up and made into lakes of sand and rock and silt. So it's coming from an interesting area. The cheesemakers, they don't use tractors. They use draft horses instead. They don't use fertilizers or pesticides. I don't know. Maybe I just like the pretty picture of this, but I feel like I can taste that. Maybe that's where we're getting that geranium sort of sense. You know, what the cows are eating is pretty natural and a great mix, and it's showing through in the cheese. So I think it's a winner.
Yeah,
Definitely.
I think this is like a great gateway sheep's milk cheese. Like if you've ever been like on the fence about a sheep's milk cheese, well, come on over. This is it.
Agreed. And I would sit here and read you all of the awards it's won in the U.S. Championship, American Cheese Society, but we don't have enough time. So let it be said that it's won a ton of cheeses. It's a great cheese to seek out. And I think it's going to be fun when we start pairing things after. So it's time.
Would I be a fool to say that, like, if you're a fan of like Brebbi, like Pyrenees Brebbi, that this is like the Americano version of that?
Yep. Totally. That is a perfect, or an Osaurati kind of. It's beautiful. It's very much a Pyrenees sort of sheep's milk. And part of that is because we just don't have enough sheep's milk cheese here in the US, which is very sad. Because honestly, the sheep's milk category, if I had to pick one category, I probably would pick that. But I am a salt bomb lover. I lean towards salty. I still like it with sweet, but I love sheep's milk cheese, and I wish we had 3 times as sweet in the US. So I could wax poetic about why we need to get more sheep in the US. There's like really weird things that we don't do in the US with sheep that like you can trace all the heritage, like a dog show in Europe. But here we're just sort of like, we have trouble getting good sheep. We have trouble finding sheep that are right for the region. It's really an interesting thing, having talked to a lot of sheep owners, sheep farm owners and such. But 20 years ago, 30 years ago, goat's milk cheese wasn't very popular here in the US, which is going to take us right into our next cheese. And now everybody makes goat cheese. Like that's the entry level if you don't want to like also have 40 giant cows on your farm. Goats are the way in to cheese making. So our next cheese is Humboldt Fog. And one of the things that you asked for, Justin, is like, let's talk ash. So this is an ash ripened cheese. It falls into the bloomy and brainy category. And it has an ash line through it. You can kind of see a cream line. So this is an interesting cheese. It's Humboldt Fog from California by Cypress Grove. And there's kind of a cream line along this. There's like almost it's not translucent. It is still opaque, but it looks more translucent around the edge, just inside the rind. That's the cream line of the cheese. And this is made by, like I said, Cypress Grove. It was started by a self-proclaimed hippie, Mary Keene, who got a couple goats from her neighbor so that she could have milk for her kids. And one thing led to another, and now we're eating cheese. Many, many years later. That was in the 1970s. This cheese is great. It's super bright. It's very similar to, so you were talking about the previous cheese, Justin. It's very similar to French goat cheese in form and flavor. In looks, because they use a lot of ash ripened cheese there. What do you guys think before I go on more information about this cheese?
Julie, go ahead.
Well, I will say, I obviously don't know anything about cheese other than that I like it. But what I was going to say is Humboldt Fog is actually one of the few cheeses we've ever had in the box that I've had before.
Wow.
I know. So I'm feeling like I'm meeting an old familiar friend. But it definitely, I have a beautiful cream line in mine, and it just smells amazing, and it tastes really good. It's got that kind of flavor that I really like, where it is at first bite sort of one thing, and then it gets more complicated, and it's just, for lack of a better term, it's creamy and yummy, and I'm ready to spread it on something and eat it. I'm excited.
Yeah, I agree. If you've ever been not a fan of goat cheese, this thing eats to me like cheesecake. Like, it's so decadent, that, and it has like, it has kind of a cream cheese level of richness to it almost. And to believe that this is like, you can get that amount of depth from a goat cheese is kind of, impressive. And I think the thing that really is amazing about this is just how gosh darn beautiful it is. To me, there's, you could say I'm scared of this ash thing or the ash line or the intense amount of cream line space on it. But to me, there's something that's just so perfectly natural. Like I feel like this is like an I don't know, if my wife like wore this as like an eyeliner color set or something, I'd be like, I love it. There's just something, I don't know. Look at all of the intense shades of blue and beige and white. There's something about it that's just stunning, and I think that's the thing for me that hooked me on this cheese. I'm also a fan of their truffle tremor, which is like the truffle version of this guy. But yeah, this is one of the first cheeses that I was ever like intimidated by visually, but then dove in and was like, oh my god, this is a vacation, like all right,
it really is. And I'm glad you brought up the truffle tremor, because they do make that with the truffle in it, but they also they sort of randomly go through some other seasonals. There's like one with fennel pollen in it, and I believe a dill one that they'll rotate through. Sometimes it'll just be the only one. I think they've done one with like pimenton or something spicy, and it is just like, when we can get that, it is amazing. And we sell out in it in such a way that like the staff all gets their piece first and sets it aside for the end of the day, because it will be gone by the end of the day at our stores. It's really beautiful, and it is like the beauty queen of the cheese board. It is gorgeous sitting there as a big hunk, and it's easy for people to bite off, or not bite off, please use a knife, but sliced in like thin little wedges, which is how I like to do it. Is how we did it on our for the photo shoot for this box. It is beautiful because it makes nice big stacked wedges, and that beautiful black line, just we eat with our eyes. It's just gorgeous, and it can go savory and it can go sweet, and 1 minute it can be savory and you can try it again. This is a very savory box this month, with the exception of the crackers that we're going to have, which are going to be really amazing with this cheese. But like a sour cherry jam is like, it's just like heaven. That I would just have that on some like fresh grilled bread, and put those two things on it and call it lunch. It's really, really fantastic. Other things you want to say, and I'm gonna talk a little bit about the ash, so we can unwrap this a little bit for people, Justin.
Yeah, I would say I agree with your sour cherry thing. That's a good idea. And I think something that's kind of amazing about a cheese like this is like, this is a cheese that is so complex to work with. It requires simplicity. So like bread, one other thing, call it a day. Like this cheese is going to do the heavy lifting in like any application. So there's no need to like try and trick it out. Yeah.
And this is a good cheese. We talk sometimes about a hero cheese for a hero cheese plate, which is where you have just one cheese and then a bunch of different things, different ways you can try it. One, it's beautiful. It comes in a bigger wheel, but you can also get a smaller wheel. I'd say for a party, little party, little get together, getting the small wheel, cut it in half, and you can bring the other half out later if you want. When people are sad that it's gone, you're like, surprise, there's still a half wheel. And then just decking out the rest of the board with some sour cherry jam, some crackers. It stands on its own. It doesn't need three other cheeses to star in the role of cheese board focus.
Okay, so here's my educate me question.
Yes.
I have always thought of Humboldt Fog as a blue cheese, but as I listen to you, I'm realizing that it is not a blue cheese. And what I always thought was some sort of veining running through it is in fact this line of ash. So tell me, what's the difference? Because it's in some ways tastes very similar to me to a blue cheese. What's the difference here?
Good point. So what you're tasting is the tang. So if you had a blue cheese, you're correct. This is not a blue cheese. A blue cheese has a tang from the penicillin roquefort that is in the cheese. It gives you a flavor. This goat cheese is tangy because it's goat cheese. So it's bright. It tends towards lemony. Again, like we were talking with the sheep, if this was made with sheep's milk, it would be saltier. If it was cow's milk, it would be creamier, more mellow. And with the goat's milk, it's tangy, lemony, which is kind of why we, Justin and I picked the things for this box. It's because they're things go together. So the ash, and it gets confused a lot. A lot of people think it, and I think that's what scares people. So I was so glad Justin wanted to bring this in here. So ash is, it's vegetal ash, and it's nothing to be afraid of. If you're okay with food on the grill getting grill marks, then you're okay with ash. It's essentially the same thing. It's something becoming ash, and this is vegetal. It's usually some kind of vegetation, or it could be even wood. It's a food grade. It's made like a powder, and it started to be used like when they would make Morbier. I think we might have talked about this in the past, but Morbier is a big wheeled French cheese, and when they would get to the end of the night, if they still had curds, they'd put it in the mold, and then they would dust it with this ash, which kept insects from bothering it until they could milk the cows in the morning and put the other layer on it. They still put the line in, but now they just make the whole wheel, cut it in half, open it up, put the ash in, and close it back up. So it's fake now, but that's where it came from. In these little small wheels, these are bloomy and brainy cheeses. It's used for a number of reasons. One, a fresh cheese, when it first comes out, is kind of acidic, and putting the ash on it helps the alkalinity. It brings it back in level. So for those of you who are gardeners out there, sometimes you do that in the garden. You'll put lime, or you put something in to adjust the alkalinity, and your plants do better. So one, it helps the flavor of these cheeses. Two, it helps dry them a little bit. And the sooner they get a little dry, they can go into the aging room and the magic starts happening. So it's multi-purpose. It's sometimes called an ash ripened cheese, just because it has an ash rind. It just means they got it to a state that it could go ripen faster. The line in the middle is purely beauty here. It doesn't need it. It doesn't taste different. It only makes it taste different because it lets the process start and move on. So it's used as a tool that's totally edible and beautiful. But it is very similar sometimes in colors. I mean, blue cheeses can be a green blue, a purple blue, a dark blue, black blue. So but it kind of reminds you of that, but it is not blue cheese at all. It's just the tasteless powdery coating that they use to start the process.
Cool.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Good. And I'm glad you had this in there, Justin, so we could really talk about this, because she can't be the only, and Julie's not afraid of a blue cheese, but some people are, and that is not a reason to be afraid of this cheese.
Yeah, for sure. And just in general, the idea, like, I don't know, I'm the kind of person that's like, when was the last time I ate ash? And I'm like thinking, like, this is an exciting thing to be able to say, like, not only are we having goat cheese, but we've got ash. I'm all about it. Yeah,
we do. And you can get a cheese that, like, you can really see the ash, but if it's in the bloomy and brainy category, sometimes it dries it enough so that it can start growing that white mold on it. That's the bloominess, that little fuzzy white coating. That's mold. We eat that all the time. That's what makes it good. So this can be in all stages. You get this cheese one time, it can be almost all white, and you can get another piece that's almost all gray. And it's nature. Like, cheese is a living thing. So it's always different. It's exciting. I'm excited about it. And having said that, if we're ready, we have no more ash questions. I'm ready. My pudgy Willoughby here is ready for me to eat it. So our third cheese, if we're ready, is our cow's milk, our moo of our moo ba ma plate. And this one's our funky. So we knew when Justin asked for, what could be scary but shouldn't be scary cheeses, I knew we needed to do a washed rind cheese. So let's give this one a try. I can't even pick mine up to put it to my nose because it is super creamy.
So much. So good. This cheese
I just got into it.
Are getting married. I'm sorry for you guys, but we're getting married forever and ever. I love this.
Oh my goodness. So for those of you who are eating along with us, smell the rind. probably smelled it when you open this up. You're like, oh no, or oh yay, there's some funk in this box. And Julie and I say oh yay, and I think Justin does too.
Mm-hmm.
And some people get worried. And this is a thing. This is, again, like that ash. It's not blue. If you don't like blue, this is this cheese. Oh, I have.
I actually find this a little bit actually less funky than the Humboldt Fog. Like if you're afraid of strong flavors, I feel like the Humboldt Fog is even a stronger flavor than this. This to me is like both funky but creamy and kind of mild in an interesting way. Like it doesn't leave you with a weird aftertaste that you need to like clear out or anything like that. And like the mouthfeel of it is just so luscious and like, I mean, it's weird to call cheese sensual, I guess, but it has that kind of like ooze. That's so nice.
Yeah. What are you thinking, Justin?
Huge fan.
So you put cheese in your mouth.
Yeah. You know, if you like butter, this is good. You like, it's just so. The thing that I love about cheese is that it's rare that I get to, like, as someone who eats food for a living, you know, and actively pursues new flavors and tastes. Like this is like something where you like forget that milk can express itself this way, and you don't necessarily ever think about, you know, mushrooms, or there's something like very like wet cave about this. I don't know. I was hanging out in caves yesterday, and there's something that's like a little like beautiful must. I don't know how to better say that.
Yeah,
and
especially if you're getting part of the crust, part of the rind.
Yeah, and there's just like, this is why you make cheese, damn it, is because it's so rich and so beautiful. And I feel like that, wait a minute, that we made this out of milk and thyme, you know, like that's crazy. And so, I just love it. This is just an exercise in richness and beauty.
I think cheesemakers should have a much bigger head than they do. I've met cheesemakers. They're very nice people that you want to hang around. But if I was making stuff like this, I would feel like super important, because this is the magical. And what I was saying before about the rind is so this falls into our creamy and funky category. And I always tell people, if you open it up and it has too much funk, just try the paste, because the funk is on the outside. It's because it was washed. And to not get too technical, it has what we call B linens, bacterial linens, that make that funk. That is the stinky foot smell when you go into a stinky cheese shop. But if you're afraid of that, or that is too much for you, the inside paste should not be ignored just because of what it chose to wear that day. So this is a good one. And I would agree that this is on the creamy and funky scale. This is not high funk. This is like, invite me to dinner and, you know, let me stay in the guest room for a whole week kind of funk. It's really accessible. But since we had this idea, Justin's, to like make the scary not scary, this is a great example. And once you eat this cheese, you're like, oh, this could be my new favorite category. But this is in the same category as like Taleggio. And there's we have a ton of these examples of washed rind cheese in the US, but right now we're just having a moment with Willoughby. And this comes from Vermont. So the other cool thing is we've gotten a cheese from Wisconsin in the middle of the country, the West Coast in California, our goat cheese, and Willoughby is up in Vermont. So we've covered the entire country today in cheese. And I just love this cheese. And it's funny because it's super creamy, but I have zero problem just cutting a wedge and eating it as is. It's great on a cracker. People get too hung up about needing a cracker to.
I need a cracker with this. Otherwise, I'm just licking my fingers constantly. And, you know, I feel like I need something to stick into it. Give my fingers a break.
A cracker's not a bad thing. But I'm not, like, if I didn't have crackers, I wouldn't not eat this.
That's
I wouldn't be like, I can't have
That's
it.
also true.
I would have it. I might just pick it up.
You can be inventive. There are pretzels. There are other things you can get under there.
There are so many things. And if you let this get to room temperature enough, dipping a pretzel into this is not, or breadsticks or gristolini, the little thin breadsticks, would not be a bad thing. Like you said, it's like butter. Where would you put butter? This will go there.
For sure.
So I just want to say that this Willoughby was originally created by Marissa Amaro of Plowgate Creamery, and they stopped making cheese. They still make some of the best cultured butter. We get it all the time. Sometimes they'll have it with like ramps and fun stuff in it. Really, really fantastic. I think they just made one that has, I don't know how, but it has cheddar in it from, I think, Shelburne Farms. Anyways, check it out. It's a season. It's like a limited edition special thing. They always are having fun with their butter, but they stopped making cheese. And Jasper Hill, who we've had their cheeses in here a ton, with their blessing, with Marissa's blessing, they started making Willoughby and kept working on it and kept developing it over time. So like the cheese world is a magical place. Like the humans who sell cheese, make cheese, take care of I know people from all over, well, really all over the world, but especially all over this country. They are the most supportive, fantastic people. People ask like, who our competition is. Like, I don't have any competition. We go to the American Cheese Society and we drink together. Like we have no enemies. We are only friends, and everybody else just thinks we have competition, but we just like eating cheese.
You know, anecdotally, I have to say that whenever I hear the name Willoughby, I think of Sense and Sensibility, and of course the character Willoughby, who is the immediately attractive, dashingly handsome, total ne'er-do-well. And maybe this cheese will be that. It just sweeps you away, you know?
It is. That's perfect. Or it's named after a lake in Vermont. Whichever story you'd like to go with.
I love it.
I love them both.
How do you all break somebody into funk? Like how do we, so like I feel like this is a good entry level into funk cheese, but I know people that would take one whiff of this and be like not doing it. But like in my life I have found that something may smell intensely, something may smell strong, but it does not smell bad. To me, bad is rancidity. Bad is off. Bad is uncontrolled spoilage. And so when I smell this, I start immediately, like, I don't go to a place of ick. I go to a place of excellence, you know, and because it does not smell bad to me. So how do you get people to understand the difference between something smelling strongly and something smelling bad?
That is a really good question. I would say this is kind of a gateway into funk. This is a gateway cheese. We have a lot of gateway cheese. We have, you know, a Danish blue is a great gateway cheese into blue cheeses. It's usually pretty mild, really creamy. People like how it feels in their mouth. I think people would like how this feels in their mouth. Like it is not, you know, it's not like crunchy in a bad way. And it's not like, there's a lot about this cheese that anybody should like. There are people out there who it's not weird, that don't care for soft cheeses. It's a textural thing. But if that's not an issue and it's just the funk, we like to think of it, this is why we focus on cheese and pairings. We like to think of it, you need a friend to usher you into something new. And so we do it with pairings. And we've done this with lots of cheeses. We'll do a class where at the beginning of class, we ask if anybody doesn't like blue cheese. And there's always somebody. And we work our way through the class. And at the end, we have the blue cheese that they've been dreading the entire class. And we serve it with maybe goat's milk caramel from Fat Toad Farm. And then we ask everybody what their favorite pairing was. And the person who hated blue cheese, her favorite was the blue cheese. And it's not just because they like the way it tasted. It's because they recognize that it opened their eyes to something new. And it's like, it's not that I don't like blue cheese. I maybe just haven't liked the blue cheeses that I tried before, or I maybe didn't have it with the thing that made it palatable. But I think if you can pair it with something first, you start to build up that accessibility, that brain, like, I ate this. I am a person who eats this. And then you can get to funkier and funkier stuff, because that just becomes normal and you're ready for more interesting. I don't know. Julie, I know you've got some picky eaters in your life.
Picky eaters.
Had
well,
that
here's what I'd say. You guys know a lot better than I do, because obviously you're, professional food people. But what I was going to say is, obviously cooking is chemistry, right? So we know that we can actually change the chemical nature of food by combining things in various ways, by adding heat, by, doing all sorts of stuff. So yes, pairings, I think, are the number one way. But I will also teach you that, or tell you, I think that disgust, as Justin, as you said, I think it's a learned thing. Like, my toddler the other day was opening the diaper pail and sort of just really deeply inhaling. And I was like, that's an interesting smell, isn't it? And he was nodding his head and just kept smelling. And I was like, it's a very interesting smell. And like, we didn't talk about it being gross or yucky or, do you know what I mean? Anything like that. And I think that one of the things that happens is people are taught essentially to associate certain smells with being yucky. Now, the larger man in my life, is a super picky eater, like beyond human belief. And, can taste a mushroom no matter how many things you put into it. If you put one mushroom in a soup with 1,000 other things, he would take one taste of the broth and go, there was a mushroom in here, wasn't there? So that's fine. He's just never going to get over the funk. And I think, some of those people you have to abandon. But yeah, I'm a great believer in, like, the more you can teach people to just how they engage with food. And I'm not sure that you can do that, like when you either cook for them or even serve them, but just like as a general rule, with the people in my life, we talk a lot now, but I think because I have a toddler, about how you engage with food, that we never, yuck somebody else's yum, that we never, say that something is gross or yucky. And then with people who are grown-ups who you can't teach anymore, then yeah, you got to get, creative. Personally, with this particular yummy Willoughby, I would maybe throw some honey or something really sweet at it and see if we can't, get people to get over it that way.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a good point. So, I mean, that's just how I do it. I find a pairing, and I think, Julie's truth. There's some truth to, there are some learned things that take a little work to get around, but
I'm glad that you're raising your kids to not necessarily like experience that, because I don't know where or how I got the it's not yucky unless it's spoiled gene, but yeah, I have it, and it always just bums me out that other people can be so like olfactorily I don't know, biased, but like or I don't know, it just feels weird. Like it feels almost like a true prejudice. I know that sounds strange, but like when people can take a smell of something and just say that it is not good or like not fit for human consumption just because it's something that they have no experience with, drives me nuts. Anyway, I digress.
That's like the story you told with your origin story, when you said that he handed you a wad of some unknown, and Jen said that you were brave, and like you said that you were, and I think that a lot of people need to know what they're eating before they eat it. They want it to feel familiar, and they're afraid of what's new. And I think like anything else, right? I mean, okay, I'm going to just get out of the box for one second. So I teach people a lot of art and how to make art. And one of the things I talk about is when you get brave in making your art and you're not afraid of ruining your canvas, you also actually get brave in your life, because we're whole people. And so I think food is the same way. If you're a person who's scared of new things in your life in general, you're going to be scared of new food. If you're a person who's like interested in like what that could be or what's new, or, you hear somebody speaking a different language and your first thought is, what is that language and where are they from? And you know what I mean? That's a different kind of interaction with the world than being nervous or shut down by it. And so I think it again becomes a bigger thing, which I like to think that when I teach art, I teach people how to sort of be in the world. And I assume, Justin, that when you make food for people, and Jen, when you sell food to people, like what you're trying to do is you're trying to make people more open and more interested, like in their whole lives. And food is like the starting point for that. So the question is like, how do we create that bridge? How do we say this little piece of cheese that you tried that you didn't think you'd be interested in is the beginning? It's the first step in what is a really big, journey.
Yeah. Next stop, Vacherin Montour, I'm super pumped.
Yeah. That's a beautiful cheese. That is. And there are people the Vacherin people like line up for that at the holidays, especially. It's definitely a seasonal cheese that we bring in. And it's fun. It's a fun cheese. I don't know. I think this podcast is getting incredibly deep in a good way, that people are really like, I think that's nice. I think, we honestly, we eat a lot, we laugh a lot, and we shove cheese in our mouths, but it's really interesting. And I think this is a great conversation to have with this box, because that was part of the reason, Justin wanted to pick these items, I believe, putting words into Justin's mouth, was to remove the fear. And when you remove the fear, like, you open up the opportunity to have fun and be excited and be impressed and be amazed and be wowed and then want to share it. And then another person gets fun and like, it is contagious in a really good way. The kind of contagious we want right now is sharing cheese. Just saying.
But I mean, isn't that what COVID has made us miss too? Is like so many social interactions, so many deep conversations, so many moments with other people are in the act of sharing food. And that's just something that we're so not able to do right now. And I think, I miss that so much, and I think eating something that's different, you're not used to, and having that experience with somebody else, that's exciting and that's fun. And maybe that's part of what the box does, is because we're experiencing the same thing that people out there who have the box are experiencing. So it is a little bit like that community of sharing a meal and sharing something together.
Yeah, I think that's perfect. Well, I think we should start putting some pairings with this, and we can keep digging deep here. We're going to start with the Biltong, which it looks like jerky, but it is not jerky. So Biltong it's a popular snack from South Africa. But this is from the US. This is the first of our 3 pairings that comes from somewhere else, but is reimagined here. It was traditional from the indigenous people, but then European settlers came in and they started adding things like vinegar and saltpeter. I don't know if you know what saltpeter is, Justin, but it's also called potassium nitrate. I don't know how
for curing. Yeah, so saltpeter is also flammable.
Oh, excellent.
Yeah.
So you can use it.
That's why you called me, right?
While you're eating your cheese.
Foo.
So this is a lemon pepper. It's made by Brooklyn Biltong. And also 10% of their proceeds they give to the homeless. I always like to tell people when they're doing stuff like that, because it makes you feel good while you're tasting good things. I love Biltong. I started seeing it at the Fancy Food Show 3 years ago, maybe. And what I love about it is I do like jerkies. I like jerkies of all kinds, but they can be hard and some people don't like them. But I like this, is it's got that preserved nature of a jerky, but it is usually really tender. It feels to me, it's like the filet mignon version of jerky. Like jerky is like, I'm going hiking, and this is like, put it on my cheese plate. Although I will put jerky on a cheese plate too. I am not, I'm very agnostic in my meat use on a cheese plate. But
it's so
lemon pepper, what do we think?
It's really nice and thin. I'm used to jerky being like fat and sort of like, leather. I think we've all talked about that. I really like it. It almost feels as if you like took bulgogi and
for sure.
Yeah.
That's a perfect analogy. I was thinking this is like the rich man's chipped beef, or like cream chip beef on toast. Like if I made cream chip beef on toast with this, it would be so luxurious and elegant. And I think the other thing that I really dig about this is the black pepper flavor in it is just so like, I don't know. I feel like we're only getting the best parts of the black pepper. Where black pepper can feel, to some people, black pepper can feel like very, spicy. But to me, I look at black pepper as being kind of refreshing. Does that sound weird at all? But this eats very like refreshingly.
Yeah, I love it, and I'm excited for people to experience the lemon in it is very subtle, but I'm hoping that pairing this with that goat cheese, people will see like, oh, that's those two things eaten together. When we get to pairing things together, is going to make that pop. So it's a beautiful thing. I really wanted to. I'm glad Justin picked this one, because I really have been wanting people to try Biltong. It won't be the last time we put it in a box. We'll try other makers. This box is all about discovery. But here's the first time, everybody. Feel free to let us know what you think about it. On that note, I think Julie really does need some crackers. I think we should move to our guava toasted crackers. So these babies I fell in love with. Again, Fancy Food Show. People want to know like how I find things all over. I'm always searching the internet. I go to the food shows. We haven't been able to go to them forever, but
Just
Love
the
these.
aroma right off the bat, and like, don't get me started.
So these guys were created by a Venezuelan founder. His name is Leo Cotter, and he was an architect, but then decided to go into the culinary world. And what he wanted to do is like rethink what is an arepa, which is a corn-based. I think of it as like Justin, you can maybe give a better thing, but I think of it as like a corn English muffin.
Yeah, for lack of a better term, yeah, definitely.
It's not dry like that. It's usually more moist, but it's like that size. It's griddled, but it's corn-based. It's like a cornbread meets English muffin. I love them. And he tried to turn, what does that look like if you turned it into a cracker? I love when people do that, when they're like, what would chocolate look like if I made it with wine? What would, but their crackers are great. We've had their crackers in before. Hopefully some of you who are regulars remember our, I think we had a roasted corn one. The brightness on this, it feels like somebody put jam on it.
Yeah, I didn't realize that this was a thing, but like a cracker with like how do I explain this? Like a self-contained cracker, that contains its own condiment or whatever.
Yeah.
Like that's mind-blowing to me.
It's like if you could create a hot dog bun that had mustard built into it.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I'm going for sure.
Yeah. So there's a warning on these guys. It's very important we tell everybody about these. When you open this bag, you should eat them all immediately, because if you don't, and somebody comes along and eats one, they will eat them all immediately, and then you will not have been the one who got to eat them all immediately. I brought these up to a party, and I was like, hey, everybody, there's these crackers. And I was like working on something else, and I came back and like the crackers were gone. I was like, you guys didn't even eat them with the cheese. They're like, I don't need to eat them with the cheese. They're just so good. It is kind of an amazing cracker. I'm really glad that Leo left architecture for the culinary world. His work here is done.
It's delicious.
These crazed crackers are great.
I have to say, I'm getting quite scatological here on the podcast today. But so I sometimes have a bad association with guava, because my aunt, my entire life, has always done this thing, which is she puts a guava in the bathroom to make the bathroom smell nice. So now I associate the bathroom smelling like guava. Wow. I know. So sometimes when I smell guava, I immediately think of my aunt's bathroom. I know that's weird. But anyway, so sometimes I worry about guava food because I just have an association. And this is a whole idea about like discuss being taught and associations being taught. And we're back around to that. But I have to say, like, this has a wonderful sweet flavor, and you get the hint of the guava, but I don't get that like overwhelming rush of like guava smell. It doesn't have that like whole thing around it. So it's really interesting, because I don't know, unless you are a super taster, that anybody could be like, this is a guava cracker. Instead, I think people would be like, oh, wow, this cracker's so like sweet, but like crunchy, but salty, but nice. And I think that's really nice.
Agreed. Yeah. I think that sometimes guava can, be the loudest talker. And so I think that this is like, it's just a very good expression of guava. You are correct, I think.
Yeah. And I think it would be so great with so many things. I can't wait to try it with these three cheeses. We're going to get a totally different thing. The salt in that sheep's milk cheese is going to pop that even more. The tanginess of the goat's milk cheese, it's going to be like we made like a fruit salad on the cracker. And then what will the Willoughby do with a much more savory, brothy kind of flavor? Will it mellow it down in such a way that you even lose the guava, but the guava becomes like more, we get more gestalt than separate things put together. It's going to be fun to try. But before we try that, we have one more really cool thing to try. And this won't be the last time these are in here either. So these are our Asha Pops. If you're like somebody who likes popcorn, but hate getting popcorn in your teeth, this is your solution. So this is popped water lily pods. And it's a snack actually that comes from India. So again, Indian snack food brought to the US and made in LA. So we've got the Biltong from South Africa being made in Brooklyn. We're making the Craze crackers down in Miami, and then we've got this out in LA. We have covered the globe. We've covered the US again, but we're representing the globe. These have turmeric and garlic in them, which I think, again, somebody might be like, turmeric, I don't know. You got those people who've never seen turmeric, and then the people who are like putting turmeric in everything and having turmeric tea. Like, turmeric has had its sort of renaissance in the last few years. I think it's been in everything but breakfast cereal, but maybe even breakfast cereal.
I think they
think
did. Trix went with all natural coloring for a minute, and I'm 99% sure that they used turmeric to simulate the orange.
See, there you go. What do you guys think? Have you guys had these before? Not necessarily this brand, but have you had popped water lilies?
I have not, and this is the reason that, like, you know, there is literally a world of wonders out there that this is like a snack for plenty of people in the world, and we just have not had it. So that makes me very happy. Not to mention it's delicious and has a very good texture.
Yeah, it's really neat. It is like all of the love of popcorn. It's like the best part of a popcorn. That, you know, enough toothsomeness, but without the seeds, and the flavor is fantastic. And it is not, I don't want to say offensive. It's more addictive. I think that would probably be more of the problem, that I could easily eat the whole bag of these.
I thought it was going to be kind of grainy, but instead it ended up being very smooth, almost like puffed rice, but bigger.
Mm-hmm.
But that's the kind of texture that I would say is akin to. Like, it has that dense puff texture.
Yeah, it's like, not to get back on cereal, but Kix, you know, but for adults. Like, if there was just a, you know, like this size of a puffed thing, and then I could pour milk and eat it like, you know, cereal.
Oh yeah,
I would. It's just got that good of a texture, I think.
It really is fun. I think, again, we eat with our eyes. It's discovery. Like, I would encourage people to, you know, look these up. There actually are a few brands that have come on the market in the last 3 years. We have one here in Boston who's great that I really want to get in the box soon too. When people see this on a plate, they reach for it. I have a friend who works in the cheese world, and she always would do things like throw Swedish fish on a cheese plate. She does something to break that barrier and get people to run to the cheese plate. I don't know why she has people in her life who don't already run to the cheese plate, but it does make this like, let's not take this too seriously. Let's just enjoy this kind of thing. And I think this fun shape, the shape is like, I can't imagine anyone not reaching for this, because it feels like something you want to like eat. It's not scary, but it is different. If I said, oh, does anybody want any water lilies, without showing you them, I would wonder how many people would be like, oh yeah, please serve me up some water lily pods. But you see it there, and it's just like, oh sure, I'll just put my hand in, and then you'd be like, hey, you're eating water lily pods. And
yeah,
they're like,
I love
yeah,
it.
I am.
Very cool.
That's what it's all about.
Okay, so now that we've tasted everything, oh, and by the way, this is the mother and son team, Jai and Asha, who run this. Again, they've got other flavors. I think this is perfect for this box. I think we should just do a little bit. We're long on our thing, but I still think we should take some time to see if we have some favorite pairings on here. I am really excited for people to try that guava cracker with the goat cheese with the Humboldt Fog, and that's where I'm going to start. But and Justin, basically what we do here is we try things together, and we, you know, Julie's been known to dip cheese in cheese as we go along, so, you know, nothing's too weird for this part of the podcast.
Remember when I said this eats like cheesecake? Now it's guava cheesecake.
Yeah.
With a crust.
It's really good. Very good.
Yeah, I did the guava cracker with the Willoughby, and oh my God, that is so good.
Oh wow.
Well, guava and cheese is like a very like common thing. Like, if I'm not mistaken, in Brazil they call it Romeo and Juliet, and it's like the idea of having one without the other is dumb, you know.
Really?
So I can see this thing playing well. I can see this guava cracker playing well with nearly anything.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to go with what
Very
I think
much.
is not going to taste good because I always think that's an interesting thing to do. I'm going to mix the Biltong with the Humboldt Fog. I'm just going to spread a little Humboldt Fog onto my Biltong and see if it's a good or a bad combo.
I'll do that with you.
Take the challenge. Wow. The combination of the Biltong, it almost like neutralizes some of the funk in the Humboldt Fog. Really interesting. Not what I expected at all.
It kind of comes across to me like, okay, this is weird, but like I want to say a Swedish meatball. It doesn't taste anything like a Swedish meatball, but like when we have a creamy sauce on meat.
Stroganoff.
It's giving me that. Yeah, stroganoff, totally.
For sure.
It's got a stroganoff kick.
Definitely.
It's brighter.
It maybe it's the acid.
Stroganoff tastes good.
Well, stroganoff, is like so much sour cream. So like it's like sour cream and mushroom, right? So if you think about the earthiness that you get from the mushroom, the acidity that you get from the sour cream, like, yeah, you just made that, Julie, like right there. Very impressive.
Cool. So cool.
Cheese board stroganoff.
Yeah.
Right.
And this is how people fall in love with something new. They have to be brave enough to put it in their mouth, and then they are rewarded for it, which is a really good thing. I had some of our lovely salty sheep's milk cheese with the guava. Actually, I'm going to have it with a little bit of the biltong. I'm just going crazy.
I just did that by the Cooch and the biltong.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like the water lily, popped water lily seeds are such a great chaser. They're like a palate cleanser almost in a weird way. Like if you didn't have a glass of something to drink, you could just pop a couple of those and like get your mouth almost back to neutral, interestingly.
The magic of turmeric and garlic. Right? Yeah, pretty fantastic. Well, Justin, I think you did a fantastic job curating this. After this podcast, I'm going to talk you into doing another box with us because I think people deserve some more magical curation from you. But until then, let's tell people how they can find some of our vendors. And I want to talk more about what Justin's got coming up. Our Humboldt Fog friends, you can find them at Cypress Grovers, Grovers. Jasper Hill makes Willoughby, and you can find them at Jasper Hill Farm. We can find our Guava Craze crackers at Go Craze. Our water lilies are at Asha Superfoods. Who have I missed here? Oh, and our Biltong at Brooklyn Biltong. You can follow Julie at What Julie Ate, and you can follow Curdbox at Curdbox, you can watch this on video if you love this so much. Now you want to see pictures. If you're just listening, go check out the video. But Justin, they can find you at Eat Fellow Humans. One day you're going to tell me how you picked that awesome name. But what else? We've got your podcast coming up. You said you're working on this new wine project. Where can they find you? If they haven't got enough Justin, they want to watch Justin while they finish their Lily Pops, where can they find you?
You can find most of my TV work on Discovery Plus or Food Network On Demand. I have a show out there called Eat the Universe, if you're a fan of Marvel comics and characters, which like kind of who isn't. And then, Eat Fellow Humans across the board. I came up with that because I was a waiter back in the day, and I felt like I was always just saying, like, guys, come on, eat, telling my fellow humans to eat. And then I realized that, like, without a comma, eat, fellow humans, is, I like it when things with the addition of a comma, can be a thing of, benevolence, like a gesture of excitement, or cannibalism. Why not?
It's always good. Those are like two great things to be able to represent in one statement. And Justin, it has been an absolute pleasure to have you, to be on your podcast with you, to have you on our podcast, to put this box together. And we are always looking forward to more stuff. Definitely check out the podcast where all good podcasts are found. I assume, Justin, Warner's Wonders. And you'll learn all about the sights and sounds of whatever is going through his radioactive spider brain. And I can't wait to hopefully do this again. I'm just going to go listen to it now and eat the rest of my cheese. So until next month, thank you so much for joining us, Justin.
My pleasure.
Julie.
Thank you so much. What a special day.
And have a great week. And we'll see everybody next month for our next box.
Awesome. Thank you.